The man is instantly healed. The day on which this took place was the Sabbath. And so the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." Is this not like religion? Can't see God in this. They only see a guy breaking a rule. It's the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do any work on the Sabbath. That is supposed to include a 38-year-old guy who's never been able to walk, carrying his mat. So they were upset about this. But he replied, "The man who made me well said, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" So they asked him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" The man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. Verse 14, later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning or something worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. So because Jesus was doing these things on the Sabbath, the Jews persecuted him. Jesus said to them, "My Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working." The Jews had this understanding that God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. And then God established a Sabbath day rest for those that were going to be called his followers. And so that was a rest day, and you didn't do anything on that day that looked anything like work. And here they're seeing Jesus come along, and he's telling people to pick up and carry their mat, and they're not supposed to do that. And Jesus healing people on the Sabbath. Well, he's not supposed to do that. That has to wait till Monday. You can't do that on the Lord's day. God forbid you heal people on the Lord's day. But Jesus comes along and he says, "No, listen, my Father is always at work." Yes, he rested. He's done resting. He's now seeking. God is near. He's always near. He doesn't take a day off. And so Jesus wasn't going to take time off. For this reason, the Jews tried all the harder to kill him. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. You need to understand something. This personalized God, this my Father, was not a widely understood concept. That we even think that there is a personal God for us, who is our Father. You have to understand, that is something Jesus started. That very concept was begun by Christ, because Christ was the Son. And Christ could say, "My Father, my Father." The Jews didn't get that. It's like, no, there's the Father, and he's our Father of our nation, but they didn't view him as their Father. There was a lack of personal connection with God that Jesus was coming to say, listen, that's not the way it's going to be. And so they wanted to kill him because they felt, man, he's making himself an heir of God, a child of God. Jesus gave them this answer in verse 19. "I tell you the truth, the Son can do nothing by himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing. Because whatever the Father does, the Son also does." Does that not tie in with the video and the song earlier? That we copy what we see. Jesus is saying, listen, I only do what I see my Father doing. "For the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. Yes, to your amazement, he will show him even greater things than these. For just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom he is pleased to give it. Moreover, the Father judges no one, but has entrusted all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son just as they honor the Father. He who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him." Later on in this very gospel, Jesus comes to his disciples, and 3 times he says, "I am one with the Father. I and the Father are one. When you see me, you see him." This is the way it's supposed to be. I always do what pleases the Father. So I'm a good definition of who the Father is. And how you see me act is the way my Father would act. It's the way my Father is acting through me. Jesus gives definition to who God is. He tells us who the Father is. And this point, this relationship, this connection with not just a God, but with our Father, with my Father, comes to a particular point in the Garden of Gethsemane. It was the night before Jesus was crucified. It was the night he instituted the Lord's Supper with his followers. And he goes to the garden. And he knows that his arrest is imminent. And he goes to God in prayer. And we're told he goes to God 3 times in prayer. And in the Gospel of Mark, we're given his words when he goes to God. Mark chapter 14, verse 35. Going a little farther, he fell to the ground and prayed that if possible, the hour might pass from him. Abba, Father, he said, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. And Jesus uses an interesting phrase to talk to God. He calls him Abba, Father. Now, when you hear the word Abba, I don't want you to think of that Abba. Okay? That has nothing to do with God at all. As a matter of fact, their name, I was curious, how'd they get the name Abba? It's the first letter of each of their first names. So now you know. Okay? Information that you don't ever need to know. But this is not the Abba I'm talking about. The Abba that I'm talking about was what Jesus' heart cried out to God. Abba is an Aramaic word. And it was kept in our scriptures to highlight the fact that this is a term of endearment, of a closeness. Not just this creator God, not just this Father Almighty, but Father, my family. God, my Father. And both words are used. This is kind of the Bible geek warning. But both words used here. One is the Aramaic, Abba. The other is the Greek, pater. Abba, Father. This was, they wanted to highlight it so much they repeated the phrase. Now, we're not sure if Jesus used both the Aramaic and the Greek. It could have been the way the translator was trying to get the point across. But they wanted us to know that when we go to our God, we don't just go to a God. We are going to our Father. As a matter of fact, when Jesus taught his disciples to pray, how did he teach them to pray? Did he say, when you pray, say, God Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, ruler and king? Did he say that? No. He said, when you go to pray to God, use these words, our Father. That's even how it's called in some churches. It's the Our Father. And it says, our Father who is in heaven. Heaven's not the overriding definition of who God is. Jesus said, no, what I want you to understand first is God is your Father. That you have the right to go to him as his child. This was a new concept. There are no prayers. There are no prayers that people could speak where they would go to God as their Father. Until Jesus said, this is how you are to pray. Because I need to clue you in on a definition. That God is your Father who is in heaven. Galatians 4:3 gives us one of the early teachers in Christianity was the Apostle Paul. And he understood this. As a matter of fact, he actually takes a quote from the Gospel of Mark when he writes in Galatians 4:3-7, when we were children, we were in slavery under the basic principles of the world. But when the time had fully come, God sent his Son, born of a woman, born under law, to redeem those under law, that we might receive the full rights of sons. Because you are sons, God sent the Spirit of his Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And since you are a son, God has made you also an heir. You have to understand, slavery was a very common practice in the culture of the day, and a slave would dare not address the master of the house as anything but master. And that was how people viewed their relationship with God. God is the master, I'm a servant, that's all, and I just call him master. And Paul comes along and says, no, you call him Father, because you're not a slave. You're a son. You're a child of God. And with that comes a relationship with God that is more than master to slave, but father and child.